watching, I really recommend it. An interview that Joe Rogan did, I think a week ago or so, with Ira Glasser, who used to be the head of the ACLU when the ACLU was really the ACLU from 1978 until 2001.
Yes.
He retired shortly before the 9/11 attacks. And, the first crisis he had to deal with was when the ACLU was representing actual neo-Nazis, not the people who get called neo-Nazis now, like Republicans or Jimmy Dore, but like people with actual swastikas like on their arms. The ACLU represented the right that they had to march through the streets of Skokie, Illinois in 1977, a town filled with Holocaust survivors. And he explains that he thinks it's utterly insane that the left has become the primary advocates of corporate and state censorship. And he was talking about, and there's a film actually that's fantastic, a documentary of his life that was just released in the last year, Mighty Ira. I actually interviewed him too. And he was saying how when he was representing Nazis and defending the right of white supremacists and the KKK to speak, his primary allies in that fight were civil rights leaders, African-American preachers who knew that if the state got the right to censor, and they did it in the first instance against some crazy right-wing fanatic, they would turn around and use it against Malcolm X. That would be the next target. So obvious. And what amazes me about the left is if you say to the left, what do you think of Facebook and Google and Amazon? They'll say, oh, those are fascist, autocratic, repressive, oligarchical companies, which they are. And then you say, what do you think of the government, the federal government? Oh, they're neoliberals. You can't trust the FBI. What about the federal court system? Oh, they're all right-wing assholes appointed by George Bush and Dick Cheney and Donald Trump. All true. And then you say to them, do you want to give the power to those corporations and or the state and or the courts to determine who can and can't be heard on the internet? I'll be like, yes, absolutely. They can't fucking put these propositions together that they're empowering the very institutions that they regard in every other instance as odious and pernicious. And I think what's really going on, Jimmy, this whole thing with like GameStop, I think is really revealing something interesting because to me, it's one of the most serious threats to Wall Street hegemony in years. It's not going to take down Wall Street. I don't want to overstate it, but it has really fucked with their model. It has caused serious panic. They don't know what to do. They've taken all kinds of steps and said all sorts of things that they don't like to do or say because it pulls the mask down. It shows how much they cheat. They're panicked over what's going on. And it is so interesting to me that you have this huge institutional left, really well-funded, major media outlets like the Young Turks and this whole Justice Democrats industry founded by foundations, these activist groups. And now you have all these elected officials in Congress and state houses, all part of the left. And this huge blow against Wall Street had nothing to do with them. They weren't a participant in it in any way. It came from these like 4chan trolls who, to the extent they have politics at all, sure as hell has nothing to do with liberal cultural pieties or even left-wing political orthodoxies. They're just like angry at the system and they want to fuck with it and burn it down. And you have the left who doesn't know how to confront real power centers. They don't want to confront the CIA or the Pentagon or Wall Street or Silicon Valley. So they content themselves with like symbolic gestures about pulling down statues from the Capitol or going on crusades about gender pronouns or censorship that actually is being carried out by corporations and will eventually be turned against them because it's or pretending like the Boogaloo Boys or the Proud Boys are the real fascist threat in the United States and not some clownish joke sideshow that real power centers hate just as they do. This huge institutional left has almost no ability to put fear in the heart of ruling class elites. And I think it's so interesting that this real threat to Wall Street is coming from a group of people who most certainly don't identify with that left at all.
Yes, we're going to get into that more. It's amazing what's happening. As George Carlin said, the system is rigged, the game is up, and everybody sees it now. But I wanted to so we have so much to talk about, but I wanted to get your thoughts on something because in recent weeks, the online left has been fixating on me, and half the attention is animated by I would say 90% of it is animated by bad faith actors, but there's something else going on. The obsession with me, I think, Glenn, shows the directionless the left is in right now. There's no larger political project for people to organize around, and there's no leadership coming from figures like Bernie Sanders or AOC or the Squad. None. There's nothing that they have us focused on to work towards right now. Nothing except censoring our political opponents. And there's still lingering resentment against me for my force the vote strategy, not because of the merits of it, but because it exposed progressives in power that they won't challenge the Democratic Party leadership. And the people who we elected and thought would be an insurgent force just turned into loyal Democrats. It turns out the Justice Democrats are just Democrats. So do you believe that the left will simply turn into the Democratic Party apologists during the entire Biden era?
Yes, I do. So first of all, this obsession with you, I don't mean with your strategy, but with you personally. There's like an entire, I think that like they're going to create a Pulitzer Prize soon called Pulitzer Prize for Excellence in Commentary on James Dore. It's like an entire fucking industry. Like a third of the left media talks about you personally, constantly, all the time. It reminds me a lot, in 2010, 2011, 2012, when WikiLeaks pioneered this really groundbreaking model of how secrets of the most powerful entities on the planet can be leaked and published. It found a major vulnerability in actual power. It was incredibly innovating and inspiring and exciting and important. And within a short period of time, all anyone wanted to talk about was that Julian Assange was an asshole, that he had like an abrasive personality, that, as though like the issue was, do you want to date him? And it just became like, no, that guy's a jerk. Who gives a fuck? Yeah, he is a jerk. Julian's a jerk in like a lot of ways, and like a lot of ways that I can be. You're definitely an asshole. Like these things are not in dispute, but they're also totally irrelevant, right? They're completely irrelevant. The reason that you're effective is the same reason that they consider you an asshole, because you raise your voice, you care about things, you want to be heard. You think that somebody could have done what Julian did, which is fuck so hard with the CIA and the military industrial complex and the most powerful corporations on earth if he was just like a nice guy who kind of was just like a retiring personality? No, they're inextricably linked. But this is what I was saying just a minute ago in that last answer was, if you're on the left and you have two choices, one is to try and think about how to fuck with Wall Street like that Reddit group just did, or to blow holes open in the walls of the NSA or the CIA like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange did, or try and take down the monopoly power of Silicon Valley like a lot of hardworking people are doing who care about those issues, including your good friend Matt Stoller. That's one way you can go. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of risk. It's very difficult to figure out how to do that. Or you can just like devote yourself to like internet gossip and bullshit chatter and like trivial personality disputes. That is super easy. And it's also profitable. People love to like hate. You stimulate hatred. Fuck Jimmy Dore. Fuck Jimmy Dore. Look at what he said. He put this guy on his show. What does that have to do with politics? You claim that you're interested in the working class. You claim you're interested in people's lack of healthcare coverage, in people's inability to get jobs, they have to live at home. Their communities are ravaged by joblessness and you're talking about Jimmy fucking Dore and whether or not he's a good guy or whether or not you like him, instead of the strategy that he pioneered that caused a huge debate about how to bring. If you're doing that, you are an absolute and complete and total coward and a fraud. You're doing that because you need to fill your YouTube shows and your columns and your Twitter feed with content that keeps people interested, but like you're stimulating the most primitive, primal emotions of people that are totally easy to stimulate, but that are completely meaningless to stimulate. You know that you have no ability to do real activism, to put real fear into the hearts of actual ruling class elites. And I find it so revealing. It doesn't mean that every one of their critiques of you is false. I just don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about your personality. I don't want to debate that with you. I'm more interested in what you can contribute to these political aims, these political goals, the things that we're all claiming we're about. But they're not about that, Jimmy. They don't have any ability to do it. Now, the other thing about it is that I just want to quickly comment on. You tell me, what is the difference between that left and the Nancy Pelosi-led, Chuck Schumer-led Democratic Party? I want to know what the difference is. I don't see any fucking differences. And they know that there's no differences. They spent the last year of their lives marching behind Bernie Sanders, who in turn was marching behind Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And you know what's going to happen in about 2 to 3 weeks? Bernie Sanders is going to shepherd the nomination through his committee, the budget committee, of a woman who has spent the last 5 years calling him and his followers continuously in the most bad faith way, racist and misogynist and bigot. He's going to say, my friend Neera Tanden, this is not a time for past grievances. We have too much work to do. I'm really proud to call you my friend. I think you're going to do a great job. He's going to be the most cucked motherfucker, even more so than he already is, in the entire universe. And it's just going to show those people even more that all you are warriors for the Democratic Party. Let me just give you one example. This week has been like the most amazing week of having the left and the right unite against Wall Street. Almost everybody across the spectrum supports what those Redditors are doing and is thrilled to see these hedge fund leeches suffering. And it has it's created a major opportunity to regulate, to legislate, to reform. And Ted Cruz, whatever you think of him, reached out by saying, I agree with AOC about this. So that was an opportunity for right and left to join together to do something that supposedly her main reason for existing as a political figure, which is fighting income inequality. And instead she turns around and says, fuck you, I don't want to work with you. You guys got me murdered. You're a white supremacist. And suddenly the two camps divide again. And over here you have the red team and over here you have the blue team cheering like morons at a fucking high school football game again because she ruined that movement because all she wants to do is attack Republicans and fortify the Democratic Party. That is what the left has become, and they know it. And that's why all that's left for them to do is do things like talk about your personality and occasionally mine.
It is stunning to see AOC turn into Adam Schiff. It is stunning to me to see her just totally focus all her ire. And it started for me at the CARES Act, so last March, when she blamed the Republicans for the CARES Act instead of her own leadership who had just negotiated that bill. And so when everybody was making a big deal how she flapped her arms, but she was only flapping her arms and pointing her finger at the Republicans. And now here we are again. And when she's supposed to, we elected her to oppose Nancy Pelosi, she won't do it. And now when the time comes to actually stick it to Wall Street, she says no. And instead of doing that, she'd rather prop up in a most disingenuous way the Democratic Party. So she's there. The reason why they wouldn't do forced to vote was because it would have been injurious to the Democrats in the House who were against Medicare for all and would vote against it. So Nancy Pelosi said you can't do it, so they didn't. And so it's just stunning to me to see what is just manifest to everybody. And it's I've said this for years, Glenn, the United States is a country of adult children of alcoholic. They don't get mad at the person screwing you, right? Like the Justice Democrats who aren't doing what they said they would do and oppose Nancy Pelosi to get anything. They're not mad at that. They get mad at the person who points out that they're not doing what they said they would. And that's what adult children of alcoholics do. I know that very well. So that's the situation we're left in. And it's just amazing that I could become some kind of, I'm fucking a comedian in my garage in Pasadena. And it just goes to show you the bankruptness of those elected officials, the Justice Democrats, AOC, all of them, that I could have this kind of impact is because they are completely selling out their own campaigns, their own campaign workers, and everybody on the left. Go ahead, say whatever you want.
Yeah. I mean, the person who should have been leading that campaign was not Jimmy Dore. It should have been AOC.
Yes.
As you said, the reason it ended up being you is because it wasn't them. It should have been Justice Democrats. It should have been DSA. None of them do it because they're just soldiers of the Democratic Party. Look, I think, if you think about the excitement that came from AOC's election, let's remember she did not unseat a Republican incumbent. Right. She unseated a Democratic incumbent, a Democratic incumbent who was extremely loyal to the Democrat, who was one of Nancy Pelosi's favorite members of Congress, who would have been saying all the same stuff that she's saying now about the Republican insurrection, about white supremacy. Every last word that she utters would have come out of the mouth of Joe Crowley with complete comfort, except to the extent that he really didn't speak much. He just did, exercise his power in back rooms. But he would have been totally comfortable with all of her messaging. So the thing that amazed me was They humiliated AOC about a month ago, notwithstanding what a good soldier she is. They hate her. They hate her so much. They hate the fact that she talks about primary challenges against them without actually confronting them to their face. I've heard members of Congress talk about her, and they really don't like her, the Democratic members. And they humiliated her. She wanted to be on this committee, this very powerful committee. The House leadership refused to back